Welcome to The Life You're Made For with me, Dr. Heather Penny. We're going to be having conversations that talk about us spiraling up versus spiraling down, because we all want to be living lives that are about thriving, not just surviving. This is the life you're made for. So let's get going. Hello, everyone. I am very excited to have someone I personally respect, but is also just a dear friend of mine. Her name is Jodi Davis, and she's been very successful in the nonprofit world as a philanthropic advisor, consultant, employee, leader. She's just been a lot of influencing spaces for the nonprofit world. And I just want to welcome you to the show today, Jodi.
Thank you, Heather. It's great to be here.
Oh, thanks. Before we jump in and have them tell you a little bit about you, we have a favorite person that we share.
Is that favorite person related to you?
Yes. Well, I guess through marriage.
Yes, he is a favorite person of mine.
Yes. I got to meet Jodi through my husband, Darren Penny, and he's raved about her for years. And then she really enjoyed having him. So tell us a little bit about your experience with Darren.
Oh, my goodness. Darren's one of my favorite people. And I met him when he was transitioning into his current role. And I actually gave him a little bit of a hard time, and we laugh about it now. But I was really pressing him, what are you doing? And anyway, I think I was his first client. I'm not sure.
You were.
And came to just be, had a great time working together, very successful. Mm-hmm. And I referred to him as not only this consultant we were working with, but just a trusted member of the team. And he really was. And it was exciting to see how many people's lives we've touched and improved.
Oh, well, I think it's been over a decade that you've had a relationship. So I've gotten to hear about you vicariously, and I've gotten to enjoy you vicariously, I should say, behind the scenes, and gotten to hear a lot about you. And he speaks so highly of you. So he was always encouraging me. You got to get to know Jodi Davis. You got to get her on your show. You got to talk with her. Take her to lunch. And I'm like, yes, I would love to. So here we are. And Jodi has also recently endorsed my new book coming out, Gray Space, has been able to read it. And that's a little bit of what we're going to talk about today. But before we jump into the conversation, I do want our listeners to hear a little bit about what your experience has been, where you're at in life, and where you find yourself in this new stage, in this new season.
Oh, thank you, Heather. Well, I really appreciate you inviting me today. And again, I have such respect for you and the impact you're having on the world right now. It's incredible. So I recently stopped working full time after 44 years, and in the nonprofit sector, philanthropy, volunteer management, marketing, communications, a little bit of everything. But in the last decade or so, 20 years or so, philanthropy. And now I like to say I'm living my best life, spending time with family. I've been married to Matt for 42 years. We just celebrated. We have 2 daughters. We have 2 granddaughters who just turned 5 and 6, and my mom will be 96 in January. So life is full with family, really spending more time exercising, which I really have enjoyed and haven't spent as much time doing that. So a lot of good classes and walking and reading. I kind of stopped reading when you're so busy with your, career, that pleasure reading piece goes away. So I'm having a lot of fun with that now.
Oh, good. I hope you're picking up all sorts of genres, not just leadership and not just self-help.
No, not at all. More fun stuff.
But. Good. Well, I know you listened to 2 of my podcasts that we had talked about. One was on play and one was with Sharon recently. Tell us a little bit about how that influenced you.
Sure. So the play, when you stop working full time, everyone asks you, well, what are you going to do now? And so I started responding with, I'm going to play. And it's interesting because play means something different to everybody. And so I spent a lot of time thinking about that because I love to read. Like I said, I love to exercise. I love spending time with friends and family. But I have some friends that love cleaning out closets, cleaning their garage. That's play for them. That's not play for me. They come
Me
play with me and do that. So it's just interesting, I think, to really figure out what play means for you.
Yeah.
And so that's what came up for me in the podcast.
Oh, are you still doing golf?
Oh,
at Hagen's Oak? That's a shout out to the Mortons over there.
Oh, love them. Yes.
Yes.
Yes, I just finished some lessons there and I'm getting back out on the course. So I'm loving that. And it's social, it's outside, it's athletic, and it's really hard.
Oh, I wanted to do it. I just I'm not retired yet. So I didn't have the time on that. But my son did an internship out there and he kept saying, you got to go out there and join the women golfers. And I'm like, I don't have 5 hours. I'm so sorry.
It's a huge time deal, but when you have the time, we'll get you out there.
Oh yeah. It's on my radar for when I retire too, or even like maybe arrange my day to have a day off. I can't wait for that.
Yeah, we'd love it.
And then I know you're listening to Sharon too, who runs Sharon Says So. What hit you with that one?
That was when she talked about leaning into your strengths and not your limitations. And that really resonated because for all the years, throughout my career and really my life, I've always been in leadership roles for whatever, high school, college, I've been pulled into leadership and appreciated that and the responsibility that comes with that. But it really got me thinking about we spend so much time focusing on what we're not good at and stress about that. And if we spent more time on our strengths and building those, gosh, just imagine how much more, how much better we would be in what we're doing, a better leader, enjoy what we're doing.
Yeah.
So that really, I guess it's a balance because, we always want to be learning and getting better. So I don't want to say we shouldn't ignore everything that maybe, limitations, weaknesses, whatever you want to call it.
Sure.
But it really got me thinking about that balance.
Oh, you're right on. I love that thought. And I often tell people it needs to be about 60-40, like 60% of you're living in that sweet spot, 40% you're paying your bills, doing your taxes, the stuff that we don't want to do, but you kind of have to do for adulting. Maybe on a good day, it could even be as high as 70-30 or 80-20, but you're recognizing that balance. Where we start really losing our sense of fulfillment in our work is when that balance gets opposite, where you're 60% of the time doing the have tos and you're stuck in your weaknesses versus your strengths.
Yep. I like that. The percentage piece, that's a good reminder to think of it that way.
Oh, I work with so many high achievers. I have to give them numbers, Jodi. They don't let me off the hook unless they have numbers. They're like, well, what do you mean that I have to play or I have to look for fulfillment or work out of my strengths? And I'm like, ooh, here's a number for you.
Oh, that's great. Do you find them wanting to focus more on their limitations and weaknesses?
You bet. And I will say that's a little bit of how we've geared our world. I think about even the K-12 system. My background is education. Okay, great. You're getting an A here, but we notice you're getting a D- over here. What do we need to do to bring up that grade? So we've really conditioned from a young age how to target those weak spots. And to your point, I'm not saying that that's not good. We need to have that, but we've lost the balance. So then if you've conditioned a young mind, moving up into adulthood and experimenting in leadership and other spaces, and they're constantly just zeroing in on weaknesses, they let go that value of their strengths and they actually dismiss it. And it's a common issue with high achievers, and all my fingers pointing back. I have to hire my own coaches and people in my life and mentors and therapists to remind me, stay in your strengths and stop getting distracted by all the things you're not good at.
That's so well said. And what comes to mind for me, I have a 5 and a 6-year-old granddaughters. The 6-year-old is a total perfectionist. When she was writing a card the other day. She finally said, you do it, because she wanted it to be perfect. And the letters weren't quite right. The 5-year-old, Megan, she doesn't care.
Yeah.
She draws things, she loves things, and just lets it go. And it's so interesting. And I'm wondering whether it's an age thing or how they're wired, but what's getting reinforced at school.
Well, and I love parenting, grandparenting. It can shift seamlessly over into leadership, right? That you cannot be the same leader for every individual. You can't be the same grandparent for every grandchild. So the one that's super free spirit, I want to say, yes, keep celebrating that. And once in a while, you're going to have to teach her how to color inside the lines. Right. And then the other one who's constantly coloring inside the lines, you're going to have to say, honey, don't worry about the lines. Just go for it and live free a little bit. So you have to then adjust your voice as a grandparent. And I'm going to say again, over in leadership, it's the same thing.
It's a great reminder. Thank you.
Yes. I used to joke with my kids too, who were pretty opposite. This lecture is for you. You need to leave the room.
And I've met your kids, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
One of them would be sitting there taking notes off of what I'm saying. I'm like, you put your pencil down. You don't need to hear me. You pick your pencil up. You need to listen to me.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
Well, let's pivot over a little bit to grace space.
Yes.
I got so many great ideas, and I think this is going to be a great conversation to introduce the book. We're planning for it to come out around mid-January. And I think we're going to be making some availability for pre-sales. So we'll have all the details coming your way, but
exciting. I was hoping it'd be earlier so I could give it as Christmas gifts.
Oh, shoot. Well, if it is, I'll see if I can do a special order for you,
New
Jodi.
Year's. I'll do New Year's.
Okay. Tell me a little bit about what hit you, and I'll let you just start wherever you'd like. But what were some big themes for you that stuck out to you in grace space?
Well, I want to say you had me just in your introduction, just in describing what your goal was with the book and how to empower leaders. And your 7 practices, I think, are just right on, and the practical steps that you give with that. So really just appreciated your approach. In those 7 practices, you had the responding versus reacting, questioning versus accusing, and all that centers around curiosity and staying curious. And I think that's just so important, whether it's in parenting, grandparenting, leadership. And I'm curious about curiosity in why it's so hard to stay there. And one of the things you talked about in the book was it's so tempting to jump to assumptions. And it's made me think about a lot of examples in my life, especially in leadership, where if I've assumed I knew what was going on with someone on my team. And when I took the time to be a little more curious and ask some questions, it wasn't at all what I thought.
Oh, do you have an example coming to mind?
Well, I have what's come to mind. It's a little bit different than what I've described, but it's something that happened to me early in my career. Early in my career, I was managing a number of departments, including the reception desk of a large healthcare organization. Don't ask me why we ask young new managers to manage reception. Do you know how hard reception is? Anyway,
I don't.
Oh, well, you get all the public coming in, you have to manage that. So,
sure. Yeah. High EQ, right on the spot. So reading the room. So,
this receptionist, she really did a great job, but people would get past her and they'd walk into the CEO suite because it was right around the corner. So I was told, do not let people get through that CEO suite. So we sat down. This is really important. We're going to have to manage this. And, one day, again, somebody got through and made it to the CEO suite. So I came out and tried to stay curious and calm. And what happened? And she said, I was calling out to her and trying to get her to stop. And the guest that was coming in was deaf. And didn't hear her calling. Now, is that not the best example of making assumptions and judging?
Yes.
So I've carried that with me. I mean, that was probably... I was probably 30 or 28 or something. That's how long I can remember.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
That's a great example. I wish I would have known that. I would have put that in my book, Jodi. Questioning versus accusing, right?
Yeah.
It jumped right into accusing her and saying, I told you, what is wrong with you? And moving straight into almost a shame place that we all are tempted to do because we get frustrated, and being able to stay in that space and stay curious. Gosh, well done.
Yep. So, and then so many examples of when an employee is underperforming. You think you know why they are when you take the time to ask the right questions, and you have some great questions in your book that just, oh, I wish I had that. Oh, it's usually not what you think.
Right. Well, I'm so glad you picked up on the curiosity piece, because I would say that's a thread behind all 7 practices. And as you stay in that space and commit to curiosity, you're able to ask the questions you need to ask to meet people where they're at. The goal in leadership is always to say, we don't want to force them to meet us where we're at. We want them to be able to feel that space of, we're coming to you to meet you where you're at, which is, in my opinion, the ultimate example of servant leadership. And then from that space, you're able to get your collective clarity together and understand what's going on, and either coach her on how to encounter with deaf people, or there's just nothing else you could have done. This was just a one-off one. But you asked a question earlier, and I wanted to return to it. Why aren't we able to stay in that curiosity? Let's talk a little bit about that. Why do you think that is so hard for us? Because it's something I've wondered too, my work as leadership coach.
Well, there are a number of reasons, I believe. I think one for me is I'm an impatient person. So I want to get to the solution. I want to fix it. And I think we assume we know what's going on and we have the answer. It is what's coming to me. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm thinking we have been trained and groomed to have the answer. Again, I'm thinking back in the K-12, and I can't help but think of the education system. Where do we get the kudos? You have the answers. You don't, ironically, get the kudos very much for a curiosity question. Put your hand down, stop talking. Let me finish this lesson. I mean, I've heard teachers say that. Or you're off track, or that's not what we're talking about. Or hang on, let me finish the lesson. Then you can ask questions. And I'm not saying that there's a better way to do that. It is challenging. I've had to manage large classes, but I think we emphasize the agenda, whether we're the leader or the teacher or the coach. We emphasize that we're trying to get through an agenda here. And then we underemphasize meeting that person where they're at, when that's what curiosity does. And I think as I've really tried to commit to that, meeting people where they're at, it makes me say, it doesn't matter how much you know, Heather. It doesn't matter how right you are. And I'm right a lot of times, Jodi.
I know that.
At least I think I am. None of this matters if I don't understand this person's perspective. And I think that's where I've started this awareness shift in my own life, that I want to commit to it, which is, I think, the essence behind Grace Space.
And I just wrote down meeting them where they're at. And that applies to so many situations, because that's something that I've spent a lot of time reflecting on with my mom, who has dementia right now. And I have to meet her where she's at. And I have to stay curious. And it's hard. It's really hard.
Yes.
And when I thought about, in reading your book, and I think I mentioned this to you, just leadership is hard. And that's why everybody doesn't do it, right?
Right.
But there's so many great tools and so many people like you to help leaders become better. And that's what's so exciting. And I think this book is really going to make a difference.
Thanks, Jodi. I love that you brought up your mom. Me, I want to say me too. My mom also has dementia, and creating a grace space wherever you go, whether you're in the leadership workplace, or whether you're working with your grandchildren, or whether you're hanging out with your mom who's got dementia, don't we all want to be authentic people that has continuity in every space? Isn't that what makes us authentic leaders?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so easy to get impatient and angry in some of those situations. And if you can flip to that curious mode, it helps so much. And so I've been trying to do that.
Oh, how do you get curious with your mom who struggles with dementia?
Boy, that's a good question. Well, one of the things that I have been, because you start to struggle with what to talk about because it's the same thing.
Right.
And she's so sweet. I just want to say, and always grateful. And when I leave, thank you so much. You do so much for me. Yeah. And my brothers, we're all in this together. But I've started getting curious and talking with her about, you're really an example for me, Mom, because I'm probably going to live long too. Yeah. So you're teaching me how to do this. Tell me more about, because she'll say, I can't remember things. I know I've just told you the same thing again. And I said, well, you're helping me learn how to do this. Yeah. That's been a nice way to manage it and stay out of the anger, impatient. Right. Not that I don't go there. Sometimes I do. Right. Yeah, so many of us are in that caregiving role in the middle of trying to lead. I mean, I coach people all the time and I just feel the strain. I just want to give them a hug all the time going, oh man, you got to go to work, lead these groups of people and have challenges that come with leadership. And then you have to go home and figure out how to meet your mom or aging parent where they're at. And that curiosity space, I do think helps you let go of the impatience. And I think it's so hard. It's like if you tell yourself, be patient, be patient, be patient. I don't know about you, but I don't do that well. I get more impatient. It doesn't seem to help me. And I have research that now backs me up on it, where some of these positive mantras we're doing, I'm like, they're not really helping people. I'm enough. I can be patient. All these mantras, I'm like, they're actually making them feel worse. So when I coach people, I'm like, yeah, okay, I like that you have that true belief, but let's ground it into something. And curiosity is something that we can ground it in so that you can start saying, well, how do I get curious in this moment? Whether you're with your aging parent, in my case, I started saying, she's got long-term memory. I want to start asking her about stories that I've never heard. Yeah. And she's starting to tell me these stories I've never heard. Oh, that's great. And yeah, so things like that, I'm like, this is my last chance to maybe hear something I haven't had a chance to hear. So things like that, and then even like in the present day moment, just staying curious around her motor skills, which I just remember her teaching me so much in art and writing. She was also a teacher and a therapist, and just how much she taught me, and she taught me how people learn and grow. So to be able to stay in that space with her where it just feels like, this young space. I was doing a puzzle with her and I was just staying curious on where she was at in her level, not expecting her to be where maybe we want them to be at this adult level, but where are they? And I would say, oh yeah, it was probably around a first grade level. And I remember thinking, oh, this puzzle's too hard, darn it. And my mom's a brilliant woman. I mean, she's got 2 masters and a doctorate, but this is where she's at in her end of life. Yep. And yeah. It's so perfect way to summarize. And what you just made me think of is when I'll drive around with my mom, she'll notice, I've never seen that before. And what's that called? And it's like my granddaughters. Oh, isn't that precious? To see that parallel. It's sweet. It's really sweet. But that helps me be more patient when I think about that, because I don't get frustrated with a living dragon when they're doing that. So I shouldn't with Mom. Yeah, well said. Well said. And I think you're right on, just starting to understand where they're at in their developmental level. And it's okay. It's okay that they've digressed, or that it's okay that they're not who we knew them to be. And there was a time that they did that for us when we were 2 and figured out how to try to do a puzzle, right? And when we were trying to figure out how to walk, and when we were trying to figure out all the stuff through grade school. And so I think staying curious about how you love our aging parents to the end is really the journey
that I hear you're on, and I just applaud you for it.
Oh, thanks, Heather. Well, it sounds like you too.
Yeah.
On the concept of meeting people where they're at, I think that's hard sometimes with our employees and our teams, especially right now, at least in the workplace full time. And we weren't in the office as much.
Right.
It's hard. Right. You didn't have those chances, just to have those informal, casual conversations. It made it harder to figure out where people were at.
You're right on. You're right on. And I saw a lot of reacting. This is honestly probably why I wrote the book, because things were blowing up left and right. And I actually sat down to write the book in the middle of COVID hitting the company. And as you probably experienced in your work, just all the new, everything from working at home to the new regulations to the fear of the unknown, what's next. And I worked with a company that was really contingent on government contracts, and government was saying, unless you're vaccinated, we're not going to renew contracts. And so then it's moving into the arena of that, where personal choice, the fear was so palpable. And I realized fear really undercuts curiosity.
Well, and that's where your grace space, when you think about the whole COVID experience, will help people so much. Because there's a loss of control, and it's just tough.
Yeah. It is tough. And I think people need that. When we talk about meeting people where they're at, we're asking, what do they need? Do they need compassion? Do they need to be challenged? Do they need to be confronted?
Right.
Do they need to be mentored, guided? I mean, there's so many powerful questions that as we grow our question bank, we can step into that space of meeting people where they're at. And that's why I'm a fan of really good questions. I go, well, if you want to be curious, you want to grow that question bank. What's hitting you as I say that?
Pardon me?
What's hitting you as I say that?
Oh, well, that I love the question bank concept. And I think just staying curious and I know I would try to have questions ready. And I think it's important to be more intuitive and in the moment, and ask a few questions about where someone's at. So I think about my team meetings and my one-on-ones I used to have. One question that I used to ask at the end of a meeting is, what was most helpful to you today in this session? And it was never what I thought. Never.
Isn't that wild? Yeah.
Yes.
How did that reframe the situation for you?
Well, it made me think about what I might want to focus on in the next meeting with them.
Yeah.
So it's just, again, it's never what you think. So staying curious, staying open-minded, letting go of control. And you talk about control in your book. And that's so hard, I think, for driven leaders to give up some control. And I'm curious just about that portion of your book, because I wanted to hear more about the freedom versus control.
I love it. You know, an example that's coming to my mind.
What?
At the end of every coaching call, I will ask, what's been significant about this conversation?
Oh,
and to your point, and I get teased about it all the time now, but I'm like, I am relentlessly going to ask it, because it grows me as a coach, but it helps me better understand how to meet you in this space, that it's an us space. It's not a me space. It's not a you space. It's an us space. So how do I do this as a leadership coach? And to your point, it surprises me every time. I am always like, wow. And sometimes I'm like, seriously, you got that out of all of this? And I was totally giving you all my sage wisdom, and that's what you got out of it. That's true. You missed the whole point that I was trying to make to you, and you did not pick up on what I was laying down. But it just, again, I think, I really don't want it to be about my agenda. I realize how much I probably lead with that agenda. And that question stops me short, that says, Heather, are you really meeting them where they're at? And are you giving them the respect and the courtesy to share their perspective, and are you really hearing them?
Mhm.
And now in the work I do, a lot of my senior leaders, they love turning it back on me. And they'll say, Heather, what's been significant about this conversation for you? I'm like, darn it, I got to be ready for it now.
We have to come up with another closing line.
Yeah, I totally. And it makes me think of that freedom and control.
Okay.
What are they really doing? They're wanting to say, hey, we want to know from you. And in my role of serving them, I want to let go of the control of guiding the conversation, of feeling like I need to be the sage on stage, so to speak, or needing to be, the all wise knowing presence in that room. What I'm trying to do is make sure we're all on the same level. And to me, that's a form of freedom. The control piece is when we're constantly saying, hey, I need to feel above you because it strokes my own ego or my own pride. Or, maybe I'm dealing with insecurity of opposing imposter syndrome, which we all struggle with. But I think having that awareness going, wait a minute, the freedom piece is really saying we're all in this together. There's no one above or below anybody in this world. And yet we each have a really significant role to play. As a leader, I'm unapologetically going to stay in that space and we're going to get results. But we're going to do it in a way that makes sure that there's respect and dignity and a humaneness there. And then once we understand where each other's coming from, the results will come. But typically the control piece comes when we say, well, wait a minute, results and agenda trumps everything. And that's when we lose the humaneness in our leadership, right?
You just, in that last line, made me think of someone I worked for, best person I've worked for, used to say it's just as important how the work gets done as what gets done. So how the work gets done is just as important as what gets done. And I used to call him all the time on that. Yeah.
That is so rare. I would love to interview him or her, whoever that might be, because in, corporate America and dealing with really this driven results, a lot of people who rise to the top, their mantra is results above all else. And even they might say, I care about my people. Part of the work that I do is I'm like, do you? I'm not sure you do as much as you think you do. Or let's ask your people and see if they feel cared about. Just saying that you care about them isn't enough. You really got to check in and make sure that your people feel like, are you meeting them where they're at so that you can move the ball forward and get the results you're looking for?
Yeah. One of the things you talked about in your book was control keeps things small. And it really resonated with me just because so many of us want to hold on tight and control and make the call. And I've just been thinking about that because it's so motivating to think about, well, what you want things to be small, you want them to be big and grow, but why do we want to control so much?
Yeah, I'm totally going to pass the ball over to you. Why do you think we want to control so much?
Because I was talking with somebody the other day, he was the managing partner of a firm, and he said, I'm a control freak. I know I am. I know I shouldn't do it. And I was trying to get that out of him. Well, why, it sounded, when I was talking to him about it, it sounded like it was more a little bit of insecurity, a little bit of, I have the answers and not wanting to delegate. But it's just, I don't know, it's disappointing because it does make things small. When you said that, in your book, it really resonated with me.
I love that I said that. And I love that you reminded me that I said that, Jodi. Thank you. That's a really good quote, Dr. Penny. I'm really proud of you that you came out and that you pulled that out from somewhere. But it made me hit me with honestly 3 areas as you were talking. It just like bam, bam, bam came to my head. I think the ego, the fear, and the shame.
Yeah.
When you were talking, and I think I want to get it really concrete because, listeners, I love giving you really concrete handles. The control we do, and I'm going to point my fingers back at me and not point at this poor guy because I don't want to blame or shame him. I want to say, why do I control? I think it's probably any one of these three reasons. I'm trying to stroke my own ego and feel good and feel powerful and strong. I'm dealing with fear, maybe an insecurity that I'm not enough, or a fear that this isn't going to go right. One of my first fears when I first started coaching is I was working with a leader in the company, and he had 40 direct reports under him. And so there's just a tremendous amount of pressure. Yeah. Multi-million-dollar company. So there's a lot of money on the line. And I had 2 sessions with him, and I'd like, give me 9 months, but I only had 2 sessions. All I know is before I know it, the CEO is on the line with me with the COO, basically saying, should we keep him or should we fire him? And I know, thank you. My first thought is, why are you calling me? I go, that's right. I'm their leadership coach and trusted advisor. I should have something on this. And then my second thought was, whoa. Wait a minute. You can't put that pressure on me. You can't put that pressure on your leader. Mm-hmm. And I will never give you a guarantee. But what I will say is you got to give me a shot, and you got to give him a shot, and you got to give us the 9 months. Fortunately, that one was a success story, and it ended up being so successful that I'm now working with the company and working with everybody across the company. And it was just a really powerful conversation. But
wow.
Yeah, it was learning how to deal with that fear. And then I would say that that third one is that shame piece, right? Mm-hmm. We're feeling the shame. They're feeling the shame. There's a fear. Did we hire the wrong person? Do we know what we're doing? Mm-hmm. And even like, I had to give them the compassion of, hey, it's okay that you don't know in 2 weeks. And it's also okay that I don't know in 2 weeks. And it's also okay that he or she has not shifted in their leadership yet. All of this is going to be okay. It's that shame piece. And why? Because we're all feeling bad, and we know there's numbers attached to this. And so I'm always trying to hold that tension of, I truly care about the bottom line. I promise you, I want to see you be successful and get results, but I need to educate you on what it takes for someone to change and grow. And that shame piece does not help.
I love that. Ego, fear, and shame. I don't know if it's in your book. I can't remember, but if it's not, you should put it in.
It's not. It's our new book. Maybe we should co-write one together. Let me know if you think of any more.
Oh my goodness.
Well, the other thing too, is I noticed when you sent over some notes to me, and I don't know if I said it or you said it, but let's just talk about emotions are the most powerful force in the workplace. Can you speak to that a little bit in the work that you've done 44 years and as a leader and as a high executive leader, I might add, very influential in the workforce. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Well, when I read that in your book, it resonated because I don't think we acknowledge that. And yet we see it every day. Workplace. So if we see it every day, we should be acknowledging it, and then we should be addressing it and managing it with tools and practices like you have in your book here. I think when people get tripped up in the workplace and leaders struggle, it's usually not because of the technical part of the job. They know how to do the job. It's the emotions. It's the fear. It's the ego. It's the shame. And all of that, I truly believe, can be addressed and people can change. I absolutely have seen too many people change who wanted to and to get better. People who don't, I believe, really don't want to be better and don't want to change.
I'm so glad you brought that up. It makes me think about in the work that I did or I'm doing, it just makes me think about past tense because I was hitting up against a lot of barriers as a coach, and I couldn't figure out what it was. And I realized it was just a lack of personal knowledge and awareness on the multifaceted emotions we all have. And you know how I found this out? And I'll go personal here. Darren and I were doing some marriage counseling, and the counselor was like, well, what are you feeling? And we're like, I'm just feeling not so good about this. I mean, we felt like very rudimentary in our emotions. And she literally, this is, several years ago, printed out this sheet and said, oh, these are your emotional categories. I'm like, what? Why didn't I know about any of these?
Yeah.
And
wow.
Yeah. And it's and then I remember Darren and I both taking a picture of it and on keeping it on our phone, and we pull up our phone, like, I'm feeling embarrassed, I'm feeling insignificant, and I'm feeling disrespected, and we could only choose 3 because being so creative, I'm like, I could choose 20 of what I'm feeling right now. I'm feeling a lot of intense stuff. So she put the boundaries on me of choosing 3, but I loved it because I learned so much about how complex it is, our emotions. And so I carried that over into my coaching. And I still remember one of my favorite conversations working with a gentleman. He when I gave it to him, he goes, "Oh my gosh, I thought there were just 3 emotions: sad, mad, and glad." And I go, I know, me too, man.
But just being able to name it and then
Yes.
and know how to address it, then it just helps so much.
Right. Yeah. One of my favorite stories, and I think I talk about it in my first book, but it's working with this leader where he came very upset to the conversation, and I couldn't figure out what he was feeling. And then pretty soon I realized, well, again, it's not my job to have clarity on it. It's his job to have the clarity on it. It's my job to support his clarity. So I just kind of slid the emotions category sheet across the table, and he started going through it, and he realized, I feel disappointed. Oh my goodness. I could have never gotten there with him as a coach. He couldn't have gotten there without having that cheat sheet, so to speak. And we began to talk about how he's disappointed. And then as a leader, he went back in that conversation. He was able to have the needed conversation where it needed to go.
Wow.
Instead of just being mad at this guy, he said, I'm really disappointed in some of the choices that you made. And then it was transformative for both of them. So he was able to stay curious about his own emotions and then bring that to the conversation and created a grace space. And so I think I'm so glad you brought that up, because it's reminding me that grace space is not a passive pushover doormat kind of leadership style. It's being able to live in that space much more centered and grounded. And we all are loving to talk about EQ. It's the essence of an educated EQ about yourself and about the other person that you're encountering.
Yep. So well said. And in your book, you also talk about that leaders are responsible for holding people accountable for bad behavior. Mm-hmm. And that is so true, and doesn't happen as much as it should. Mm-hmm. So I think these practices will help leaders do that. And by the way, I want a copy of the emotional cheat sheet.
Categories. Yeah. All right. Everybody, I'll put that in my show notes. And Jodi, I'll make sure I give you a personal copy of that too, because it has been one of my favorite tools. And it's also been, personally in our marriage, it's been awesome. And then I brought it into our family and watching my kids and my teenagers deal with all of these intense emotions. And I'd be like, okay, family, let's all pull out our emotional category sheet and circle our top 3. They love it when they get Coach Mom, but I'm like, I don't know what else to do. We're all falling apart at this moment.
Oh, it's great.
Well, as we start wrapping up here, Jodi, one of the questions I love asking leaders, because I don't even ask if anymore, I just ask, what do you do? Because I've noticed that this is something that is continuous with leaders, how we start our day. So the question I love asking leaders is, what are some of your morning rituals?
Okay. Before I go there, I just want to say I really appreciated you pulling in your family and your examples of that.
Yeah.
Because when I started doing leadership coaching, it really helped me with some of my conversations with my daughters. And my husband, Matt, would say, I can tell you're using some of those coaching techniques right now. So it's so true.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm getting thanked or cursed, to be honest, in some of these personal loans, but I'm like, I hope it's a thank you. And I want to just say, you're welcome, everybody.
No, it's great. It definitely crosses over. So my morning routine has really changed. I mean, when you're working full time and it's crazy, you're up at the crack of dawn and you're on your text and emails and coming out the door and traveling and everything else. So I'm really enjoying sleeping more. And I'm a morning person. Yes. So I love the morning. I love the quiet of the morning. So I'll usually get up, and when it's warmer, sit in the living room, be able to look in the yard and all, get my coffee or my tea. But when it's cold, sometimes I'll go back to bed. Sit in bed. It's so cozy.
I love it because you never could for years, could you?
Never could. So it's really, this first year, you're just doing things that you just really never could.
Yeah.
I try to limit my screen time, but I have my phone. I usually will go, I have the Bible app and I'll do the verse for the day that just reflect and kind of ground me. And then I'm a Wordle person. I don't know if you do Wordle.
I don't. No, tell me about this.
Well, it's a word game. You have to figure out the word in 5 letters anyway. And then there's a new one that's called Connections. So I do those on my phone, but it's good for your brain.
Yes.
And then I've always worked out. I love working out. And so I'll walk or I'll go to a class every day I do something. Wow. And then just, it's amazing. Everybody says that, you don't know how you ever got anything done when you were working full time, because I'm staying pretty busy with family and friends. And it's been great.
Oh, so happy for you. Okay. For those of us who aren't retired yet.
Yes.
I'm going to ask you to reflect back. You had full family life, 2 kids, long-standing marriage. You've worked high executive jobs and have felt the pressure at so many different seasons of your life. Tell us a little bit about what your morning rituals would look like then to keep you grounded throughout the day.
I have always been a walker. So getting out and walking, or I would go out early, really helped to clear my head and just get ready for the day. I also, this isn't the morning, but it helps the morning. The night before, I'd really look at my day and figure out, what's on the docket? What do I need to be prepared for? I really believe that when you do that the night before, when you're sleeping, and sleep's really important to me, and I love to sleep, your brain is still working things out for you. So something that you might be struggling with or puzzled about, you wake up in the morning and there's clarity. So, and then I think not scheduling too much in one day. I know at one time in my career, my calendar was packed all the time, and it wasn't healthy and it wasn't productive. So with my team, I used to say the same thing, decide what your guidelines are for your calendar, stick to them. Having a beginning and end of your day. I don't think, staying on email and text 24/7 is a good idea or necessary. So I think that.
I love that. I love that. What I'm hearing is kind of heart and head. I'm hearing task and just self-care. And I think that's the balance that we're all trying to hold. And sometimes we can do it in 5 minutes. And sometimes we need to take 2 hours and anything in between to kind of help prep us for the day. And I loved your thought about before you go to bed. It's helping me not feel guilty, because I think I've reached for my phone several times to check my calendar going, I feel like I shouldn't be doing this in bed, but now I'm fully going to embrace it, Jodi. And I'm going to say, my mind is working it out in my subconscious. And even like last night, I reached for the phone. I'm like, oh, I'm so excited. I've got a podcast to do with Jodi Davis tomorrow. So I was able to properly have all these amazing questions for you. And that's probably why this went so well, Jodi.
Well, it's been my pleasure, Heather. Such a gift. And thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for just coming on here today and just taking time to share some of your wisdom. And before we sign off, I'll just ask you, what are some encouraging words you want to leave with all our listeners?
Boy, just I think remaining hopeful. I'm the eternal optimist. And I think there's a lot of hope in this world and a lot of good. So let's embrace that and keep it moving forward together.
Oh, I love that. Love that. Well, thanks for joining us today. And everyone, thanks for just listening. And we look forward to just cheering you both. Both of us are cheering you all on, right?
Yes.
All right. Take care, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We had such a great time today. And obviously, we are all stepping into this life that we're made for. But isn't it nice to have a little bit of support along the way? If you want to find out more about the life that you're made for, come find me at heatherpenny.com. Go ahead and subscribe. Give us a review. That really helps us out and helps spread the word. You get to step into the life that you're made for. Cheering you on.